This is the Brave New Coin Crypto Conversation, hosted by Andy Pickering.
Hi everyone, Andy Pickering here. I'm your host and welcome to the Crypto Conversation, a Brave New Coin podcast where we talk to the people building the future in the Bitcoin, blockchain and cryptocurrency space. My guest today is Ken. Ken is the CEO and probably the founder of Xverse and Secret Key Labs. And Xverse is a wallet. Secret Key Labs, I think, is a, well, we'll learn all about that today. But essentially, we're building on stacks, building on Bitcoin. Welcome to the show, Ken.
Thank you, Andy, and happy to be here.
Happy to have you here, Ken. We'll do what we do at the beginning of the show. I'd love it if you could please introduce yourself. Love to hear a little bit about your story, where you're from, what you've been doing in the lead up to founding Secret Key Labs and the Xverse wallet.
Sure. Yeah. So I grew up in Canada, and my background is in software engineering. So even though I didn't really get into crypto professionally until really 2017, I had several brushes with it very early on. So I spent quite a few years in the finance industry, building software for banks and other financial institutions. And I co-founded my first startup in 2013, and it was a mobile commerce startup, although I've always wanted to do something in the fintech space. So it was during this time that I first found out about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, and that really intrigued me at the time. Although given the demands of running a startup, I didn't really have a lot of time to dabble in it, nor did I have the money to invest significant amounts of Bitcoin. Right. So after poking around quite a bit, I did end up mining some Dogecoin with my PC, which I proceeded to forget about completely for a few years. And I was surprised later on to find out that the value of that Dogecoin that I mined had essentially 100x'd. So I sold all of it. But this was in 2018. Had I forgotten about it for longer, it would have actually been worth something, right? And I also had a pretty close brush with Ethereum very early on. This was in 2015. When I was working on my first startup, I was working out of Toronto, and it just so happens that we ended up renting office space from one of the co-founders of Ethereum, Anthony Diorio. And I guess they had some extra space and didn't really want to, have it go to waste. So I remember chatting with him and listening to him describe Ethereum. And to be honest, I was pretty skeptical at the time, but mostly because I didn't really have a good understanding of what they're doing, and I just kind of continued doing my own thing and didn't really hear about Ethereum for, a few years or until much later. And, one thing that this experience taught me was that you should always keep an open mind and don't just, write things off easily.
Yeah, I relate to that, Ken, because I had a similar experience with Ethereum, and I think it would have been 2014 for me. At the time, funnily enough, I was working with Kim.com here in New Zealand. At the time, Kim was running an ill-fated run to set up a New Zealand political party, and somehow I got involved. But I have a very vivid memory of being in the offices with Kim and a few other people, and someone had brought up what was it was a website, but it was essentially outlining the kind of proposition for Ethereum and the upcoming Ethereum pre-sale. So this is, pre-sale, all that stuff. And I just remember reading through the website and thinking, wow, this sounds incredible. It sounds amazing, but I didn't understand it. I barely understood what Bitcoin was at that time. But that's just how it went in those early days, right, Ken?
Yeah. I think a lot of people probably had similar types of experiences like that.
Absolutely. So we'll pick up the story then. So I think you mentioned 2017 was when you first really began to actually dip your toe in the crypto waters?
Yeah. So in 2017, I was looking for the next thing to work on, and I came across a project called Blockstack. I actually found out about it from Reddit. This is one of the Reddit threads. And I ended up watching a TED Talk by Munib Ali, one of the co-founders of Blockstack or Stacks. And he talked about building a completely new internet where the apps you use don't just say, don't be evil, but they actually can't be evil. So that really resonated with me. And so I ended up reaching out to him, and I just started contributing to the open source code on GitHub. And eventually I ended up working at Blockstack full time, building out this new internet. And Blockstack eventually evolved into what is now the Stacks blockchain. So for those that don't know, Stacks is a proof of transfer blockchain that is essentially anchored to Bitcoin through its consensus mechanism. And it brings smart contracts to Bitcoin, which enables things like DeFi, NFTs, and other apps that are native to Bitcoin. So while I was at Blockstack, I worked on a lot of the developer tools that apps use today to integrate with Stacks and Bitcoin Web3. And I also worked on the first ever wallet for Stacks. And then early last year, as the Stacks smart contracts platform launched to mainnet, I realized there was actually a real need for good wallets, especially on mobile for the ecosystem. So I founded this new company, Secret Key Labs, to focus just on that. And our first product is Xverse Wallet for mobile, which we launched to the app stores in October of last year.
Fantastic. Brings us nicely up to date, Ken. And yeah, I mean, that's fascinating that you've been deep within the Blockstack and then Stacks ecosystem, not from the beginning, but pretty much from the beginning if you've been there the whole way through. So you obviously know the history well, and the code well, and the promise and potential of Stacks well. Love you to talk just a little bit more about that. So I think I've had Manib on the show before, but man, this was would have been it was actually early 2020. Funnily enough, I remember it well because it was the day in either March or April 2020 when all markets crashed, that kind of first COVID crash. And I had a podcast booked with Manib, and man, I was pretty depressed speaking to him that day. But yeah, that was the last time I had Manib on the show, and so that was probably before the pivot or the evolution to Stacks. But I do understand that Stacks now is designed to help bring that smart contract functionality to Bitcoin and leverage the power of Bitcoin as the essentially the world's largest decentralized, properly censorship-resistant blockchain, one of the few, in fact. But of course, the rise of Ethereum has proven that subsequent smart contract platforms after Ethereum has shown that there is this huge market for things like DeFi, NFTs, and all the different use cases that smart contracts unlock. Of course, we've got this huge market that is kind of untapped on Bitcoin, and probably would love to have some of those use cases on Bitcoin. So I guess that's the kind of the high level overview, but I'd love you to kind of talk about it a little bit more. You don't need to go too technical, Ken, but certainly more technical than I can. Where are we in that kind of journey for Stacks to be able to unlock all those use cases on Bitcoin?
Yeah, so right now you can use Stacks to have these smart contracts that are anchored to Bitcoin. So every transaction you send on Stacks, in the end, the blocks are hashed and written directly to the Bitcoin chain via the proof of transfer consensus mechanism. Now, that means the Stacks blockchain will benefit from the hash power and security of the Bitcoin chain. But I think there's some limitations in the current iteration of Stacks, right? For example, you can use the smart contracts. It's called Clarity. You can use it to read Bitcoin state directly without going through an oracle, because Stacks is anchored to Bitcoin, and the Bitcoin state that it's reading is the kind of like canonical fork of Bitcoin. But the other way around is more difficult. You can't right now use Stacks to write to the Bitcoin chain state, right? And that's kind of like one of the bigger problems that the community is working on solving right now. But I think once that problem is solved, you'll actually see applications native to Bitcoin that probably don't even need to show that it's using stacks in the background. It can just be you send some Bitcoin from your wallet, potentially adding some metadata in the op return of that transaction, and that triggers some smart contracts on stacks, and it can perform a series of complex operations. You can mint NFTs. You can use it to to borrow some assets or put your Bitcoin in as collateral. All sorts of things, right? So I think right now we're kind of maybe like 70% of the way there, and then we're just waiting for that one key unlock for it to be like the Bitcoin smart contracts layer.
Okay, and so look, I know this is probably a slightly silly question, Ken, but how far away is that unlock?
Yeah, so I'm not directly working on that myself,
Okay,
so
yeah.
it would be pretty hard for me to tell you, but I think sometime in the next year we'll see that come out.
Okay, that's interesting. That's much more optimistic than I was expecting. Yeah, interesting. Okay, so and let's just circle back then to Secret Key Labs and Xverse. So I'm assuming that Secret Key Labs came first. So just describe just in a nutshell what Secret Key Labs is, Ken.
Sure. Yeah. So we are a R&D lab that is focused on building infrastructure for the Stacks and Bitcoin ecosystem. Our first product is Xverse, which is a mobile wallet for Bitcoin and Stacks. And the mission of Xverse is to build the most advanced Bitcoin wallet. We're combining the two most important technologies that we think are coming to Bitcoin, which is Stacks and Lightning. To basically unlock new use cases for Bitcoin. So on one hand, we're making Bitcoin more powerful. And on the other hand, we are improving the user experience of wallets in general so that we can onboard next billion new users to crypto.
Okay, and I mean that's a great line. And look, I mean no offense when I say this, Ken, but you'll understand that every wallet developer or across crypto, doesn't matter what chain they're building on, but they all say exactly that. They say we're trying to make the wallet user experience simple and elegant, the best it can be, so we can onboard the next 100 million people into crypto, which of course is fantastic, and that's exactly what people should be doing. That is what everyone's goal should be. But there are you'll understand this much better than I am. There are some problems along the way. Tell us about, I suppose, that journey and how you hope to achieve that. How you think you can create one of the best Bitcoin wallets. Love you to pull out a couple of other wallets that you think are doing a good job. It doesn't even, maybe not necessarily even on Bitcoin, if you can think of any others that you think are doing a good job, and how do you stack up to those competitors, and where are you on that journey to onboarding the next million or 100 million people into Bitcoin?
Yeah. So I think one of the issues right now is if you look at the Bitcoin space, right?
Yeah.
Most of the Bitcoin wallets are somewhat difficult to use, unless of course you go for like a exchange wallet option, right? And none of these wallets are really looking to bring Web3 capabilities to Bitcoin. They might use another layer one chain like Ethereum or Solana, but nobody is really building these kind of things for Bitcoin. And I think today, like even if you look at the media or just the average consumer, for most people, Bitcoin is still the first, crypto thing that they hear of, and they most likely will end up, buying Bitcoin as their first crypto. But once they have it in their wallets, maybe on an exchange or something, they realize, oh, okay, there's not much else I can do with it, right? What about this whole NFT thing, this DeFi thing, right? Oh, I have to go and buy Ethereum or something else to participate. So we want to offer users a more direct path to all these applications. So once they have Bitcoin in their wallets, they can directly participate in minting of NFTs, DeFi, and all those applications without having to exchange their Bitcoin or buy another token. So, we're just starting out, and I think in terms of Bitcoin wallets, even in terms of like Lightning wallets, right? We're still super early, and there's only a few kind of Lightning wallets out there, and to be honest, like none of them has like super good user experience that I would say like my parents will be able to understand and use, right? So there's still a lot of improvements needed there, especially in the Bitcoin Lightning space. So that's where we're focused on. And I think you mentioned maybe some examples of other wallets, right? I think Exodus, Phantom Wallet, those guys are all doing a really good job. But I think my opinion is that why not just offer a more direct path for new users to crypto with a wallet that caters specifically to Bitcoin, where there's also a much larger market, right? There's to give you some kind of like statistics, I think there's like 150 million wallets or users of Bitcoin compared to, I think it's only around 20 something million Ethereum wallets. So there's many more users, and we want to basically cater to those users first. And of course, I think the biggest problem when it comes to wallet user experience is kind of onboarding, right? Because people coming from Web2, everybody's used to username and passwords, not like a seed phrase, right? And I think most of the innovation in terms of user experience is going to happen there. And we're doing some research there as well. But right now we still try to keep it simple. So we provide users with a seed phrase which they can back up. But in the future, I think we'll offer other ways of onboarding users. For example, with multi-factor computation, users can choose different places to store their key and have a way to recover it in case they lose their device or they forget their password or something like that. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And what you're talking about there, Ken, it's kind of one of the paradoxes of crypto as well, because as much as you and I and everyone else across crypto would love to see the next 500 million people come into Bitcoin across the next cycle, across the next 4 or 5 years, whatever it is. And yeah, maybe that'll happen. I mean, that's kind of the path we're on. But it's just, if that is to happen, that's a good chunk of the population on Earth. And not everyone is really equipped to this, Ken, to have that level of responsibility, whether it is to look after a seed phrase in a safe and responsible manner, or to understand how, I'm not sure what was the phrase you used. You're talking about some kind of multi-sig, multi-computation.
Multi-party.
Yeah, multi-party. So yeah, I mean, you really need to make these things as simple and elegant and fail-safe as possible. But man, it's hard to do that with a censorship-resistant blockchain, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's going to take us a while to get there. I mean, even in the beginning of the internet, right? Like people weren't used to usernames and passwords, and people had trouble like forgetting their password, using a password that's too simple, all these problems. And I think it took like decades probably to get everyone kind of used to this idea that your credentials are a username and a secret phrase that you know in your head, right? And it's not even, I think, the best solution either, right? People have problems remembering their password and they end up using something too simple, or they have to go to like a password manager, and they use the same password everywhere, and they get hacked in one place and ends up getting hacked everywhere. So yeah.
Yeah, I saw a funny meme or joke or something on Twitter the other day, and someone was saying, My password is incorrect. So whenever I forget my password and I try and put it in, the browser or app or whatever will just say your password is incorrect. And then you go, oh, that's right, my password is incorrect. I thought that was quite clever. But yeah, probably not appropriate for for storing your Bitcoin.
Definitely.
Well, love to understand a bit more about the Xverse wallet then, and talk through some of the integrations. So, for example, what I do enjoy about the Stacks ecosystem, Ken, and I'd love it if you could speak to this, is it feels to me like there's and this is it happened with Bitcoin, it happened with Ethereum, and I'm less familiar with other chains, but I'm sure it's the same on a lot of different chains. But there's a unique culture within the Stacks ecosystem, right? There's kind of there's a vibe with, for example, Stacks NFTs. So I've had the guys on from BizNation. I've had the guys on from Gamma. I think, what Gamma is, it's a really cool Stacks NFT marketplace. And, I'm familiar with some of the NFT communities like Megapont and CrashPunks, for example. There's as kind of an early cypherpunk vibe to some of these communities, right? Do you agree with that, Ken?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think in contrast to a lot of the crypto communities out there, I think Stacks is pretty unique in that it's very tight knit, and a lot of the community focuses on basically the technology because of it being based on Bitcoin and has a really solid foundation. And I would say, at least right now, I don't see too many people of the kind of like the speculators in this space yet compared to some of the other chains. And I think it's really down to the message, the narrative of Stacks, and it just attracts the this type of people, right? Not the speculators.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think you're exactly right there. And that bodes well perhaps for the future of Stacks and Bitcoin, because I think, Ken, there's kind of a lot riding on Stacks actually, because I think there are other paths and probably other teams working on it as well, but Stacks is probably one of the best resourced teams and communities or ecosystems that are trying to bring let's just say DeFi, Web3, NFTs, all that stuff to Bitcoin. And I'm sure the Stacks team feel that a little bit, do you think?
Yeah, definitely. So I think, there's this narrative with, some of the very vocal minority of Bitcoin maxis that, Stacks is somehow a scam or something like that. But I think they are the ones that kind of have a very closed off mind, right? They were smart in that they were open-minded about Bitcoin in the first place, right? But now they are so closed-minded to new technologies being built on Bitcoin, which is very ironic to me. But I think if you look at the ecosystem in general, there aren't that many projects building on top of Bitcoin. And Bitcoin, the kind of use case that these maxis are pushing is that, it's going to be used for payments, which hasn't really, gotten that much adoption yet, right? It's going to be used as hard money, right, for store of value. But is that the only use case for Bitcoin in the future? And is that enough to keep it on top, right? I see Ethereum, bringing like smart contracts and all these new functionalities from Web3 to crypto, and it's slowly encroaching on, Bitcoin's status. Maybe if Bitcoin doesn't evolve in the next 5 to 10 years, is it still going to be on top, right? I think that's a question that people should ask themselves. So I think Stacks and Lightning, these two technologies are crucial right? If Stacks and Lightning don't pan out, I think eventually Ethereum or another layer one has a very good chance of becoming the top crypto, and Bitcoin would just have to be like some kind of very niche coin that these uh, maxis still hold on to.
Oh man, I hope that is not the case, Ken. But yeah, look, hey, Lightning. Love to understand where Lightning is at the moment. I mean, most people probably know what Lightning is, and again, the promise and potential of Lightning to essentially enable, really quick microtransactions, shall we say. But there's this perception that Lightning is, I don't know, overcomplicated and hard to use and still experimental. That's the kind of one narrative I see. But I see other people like Lynn Alden. She has some great. She seems very bullish on Lightning. But I'm sure you have a well-informed take on where we're at. So I'd love you to talk about that, Ken.
Yeah, so I think Lightning as a technology itself, the foundation is really good and it's gaining a lot of traction. Right? I think the last number that I heard was that there was like 4,000 Bitcoins worth of network capacity, and it's growing really fast. Now, the user experience, as you mentioned, it can be a little complex, right? Because you have to make sure that you have a channel open, you have enough, liquidity in that channel to make your transactions, and it's hard for the average person to wrap their heads around this whole channel thing and the custody, self-custody or custodial versions of Lightning. And I think there's a lot of work being done on that front. So if you look at the Lightning wallets out right now, I think there's like a spectrum of, a completely decentralized version where it's fully self-custody. You have to open the channel before you can do any transactions. Or there's, on the other end, like a mostly custodial solution where somebody handles all that for you, and they will have channels open for you, and you can just immediately start creating Lightning transactions. And I think the right way to go is to have like a mix of both, or give users the choice, right? Maybe to start off, you can start with like a somewhat custodial option for them to just dip their toes into Lightning, transact small amounts, and just test it out. And then eventually, if the user wants to, and if they want to, transact more, they can move it off of that custodial option into like a fully self-custody solution, right? But I think eventually, like even in the end, right, there still needs to be some type of service that they will have to use, right? Someone has to run a node. I don't think the average Bitcoin user, the next 100 million users that we're going to onboard, are all going to run a Bitcoin node, right? I don't think that's going to happen.
Probably not, Ken. But even if I don't know, 1% of them did, that would be amazing. But it won't be that high even. What about .btc, BNS names, Bitcoin naming service? I've seen you tweet about this, Ken, and I know same things happening on, again, all these other chains. Talk to us in terms of why BNS names are becoming a big deal, and also what you can do with a .btc address or name on in Xverse. I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, so .btc names is a type of name that is on top of the BNS Bitcoin name system. So that is a application that's built on top of Stacks and is secured by Bitcoin. So using these names right now, you can sign into applications, right? And the applications would know your identifier, and then they can choose to do something with that ID. For example, if it's a messaging app, right, you can look up somebody and send them a message. And it just acts as kind of like a universal username, right? And also you can use that to send crypto to other people. So right now with Xverse wallet, you can use your .btc name or any other BNS name to send STX and any other STX asset that's secured by Bitcoin. And we're working on a standard to allow users to send Bitcoin directly using these .btc names. So I think these will become really important. It was actually one of the first kind of applications built on Stacks or Blockstack before Blockstack evolved into this smart contract platform. The company was focused on bringing this naming system, decentralized naming system to Bitcoin. And along the way, I think it started to become this full stack of applications. But I think this name system is still one of the most important, and I see it as a really key component of this Web3 future, this decentralized internet that we'll see in the future. Because right now, if you use for example, a social application or even just your Google account, right? The company holds the keys to your credentials, and you basically have no say whatsoever, who gets to, hold these keys for you. And Google or Facebook or, Instagram can just decide to block you for whatever reason, right? They don't like what you're doing. They don't like what you say. They can block you. So if Web3 is supposed to be, decentralized and uncensorable, then you need something like BNS names or .btc names. And I think people like the fact that .btc is on top of Bitcoin directly versus some of the other alternatives out there like ENS or unstoppable domains. And we're seeing a huge number of people buying up these .btc names right now. And I think, again, the user experience right now probably can use some improvement. For example, you can only have one .btc name per account or per address right now. But I think some changes are being made there so that you can have multiple names per address. So yeah, I think it's super, cool technology and super important for this future of decentralized internet.
Yeah, fascinating, Ken. And, it reminds me of, what Balaji likes to talk about. So I don't know if you saw the podcast he did with Lex Friedman. It's only 7 hours long, so it's a quick listen. Oh, yeah. But I was listening to some of it last night, and, he was talking about one of his favorite topics, which is kind of the pseudonymous economy, if you like, and how, and he was using the example, was a great example actually of how, younger people at the moment, the way that they're using social media is they'll have what Balaji calls their state name, right? So they're kind of the name they're born with, their state name, and then they'll have an Instagram account that is tied to that name, and that social media account or identity, the state name is searchable, right? So it's tied to Google, and it's indexed across the web. And then they'll have another account which is their kind of their real personality, but that is designed to be shared with really just their close friends and close circle, where they can be free to be who they want to be without having that content come up in future web searches and be used against them to cancel them or something like that. And I think these .btc or .eth or whatever it is, these identities are important parts of that as well, because what you're talking about with the decentralized web doesn't really need to be tied to your state name, and it's potentially better if you can be anonymous on that decentralized web, because chances are you're not going to be, even though you and I are talking on a Zoom call right now and we can see each other in the not too distant future, probably we'll use some kind of AI algorithm and we could appear to be whoever we want to be, probably one of our NFT avatars or something like that. Does that resonate with you, Ken?
Yeah, definitely. I think, if this whole push for, a metaverse in the future really comes true, I think these names will definitely play a big part. But also, I think these names are also useful for like the existing companies and big brands, right? If Bitcoin is to become like the way that people pay for things in the future, do you really want to be copy and pasting these long addresses and potentially making a mistake, right? I think having these .btc names would really solve a problem. For example, you want to buy something off of Amazon, right? And you want to pay them in Bitcoin. You can type in, Amazon.btc. I'm sure that name is already taken, but you can then use that to send Bitcoin to Amazon to pay for your purchase or any other company.
Yeah. And if I want to say, hey, thanks for coming on the show, Ken, and like flick you like just a tiny little bit of Bitcoin, it's much easier to just send that to ken.btc.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right, well, let's start to finish off this part of the podcast, Ken. Again, look, I'll invite you just to make the case for Xverse, really, for any Bitcoiners that are listening or people that have some Bitcoin and they want to start to perhaps engage with Web3 style use cases using Bitcoin. Certainly, maybe if you're a Bitcoiner and you're listening and you don't have a Bitcoin NFT or an NFT on Stacks, then I really would encourage you to explore some of those marketplaces such as Gamma, BizNation, and you can do that through Xverse, I think. So Ken, tell people how they can get involved, download and install Xverse, where they should go and why they should.
Yeah, so you can get Xverse on the App Store right now. You can go to xverse.app, which is our website, where you can find links to download the application for your device. And we're on mobile right now, but we're coming out with the desktop version really soon. So right now you can use Xverse to manage your Bitcoin holdings, stacks, and other Bitcoin secure tokens and Bitcoin NFTs. So the other thing that we allow you to do is earn a yield in real Bitcoin through stacking with our Xverse pool feature. So as part of proof of transfer consensus, you can lock up your stacks tokens and you will get this benefit of a Bitcoin yield that's sent to your Xverse Bitcoin wallet every 2 weeks. And Xverse pool is completely free. So you can give that a try. And you can also connect to all of the applications you mentioned, like the NFT marketplaces, buying a .btc name. You can try out some of the DeFi applications right now that's already been built. For example, Alex and Arcadico. And soon you'll be able to use Xverse as a Lightning wallet. So yeah.
Very cool, Ken. And I like that you're building a desktop version because you mentioned Exodus before as an example of a good wallet, right? And a lot of people use Exodus. I've used Exodus, and I always really enjoyed the Exodus desktop version just because, it's nice to be able to see things full screen. And you're probably aware, the Exodus were probably the first wallet to really nail the user experience and make it feel like a Web2 product, right? It just worked and it just felt slick and seamless, even down to, I'm sure you're familiar with, the Exodus sound when you receive a transaction. Just little touches like that made it feel like a good product.
Yeah, definitely. And we're working ourselves to improve our user experience to that level, if not better. So give Xverse a try, and if you see something that you think can be improved, let us know.
Awesome. I think I'm going to do that, Ken. I'm going to install Xverse and have a play around. So yeah, can't wait to try it. Thank you for talking to us today, but stay there. We'll go to a very quick break and then we'll come back. We'll have some fun. We'll run Ken through the very famous crypto conversation hot take round.
In today's crypto market, the team at Brave New Coin are the sector's leading builders of custom crypto indices.
BNC's powerful indexing engine draws on Brave New Coin's premium data to calculate high-frequency intraday and end-of-day indices for a wide range of index products. BNC's custom indices help you to gain exposure to the crypto assets class and track your performance against the market without having to become a stock picker. Not sure what you need? A Brave New Coin consultant can help you assess your requirements. Contact BNC today to find out more.
All right, we're back, and I'm with Ken. Ken is the founder, CEO of Secret Key Labs and Xverse Wallet, really helping to bring all sorts of cool DeFi, NFT, Web3 functionality to Bitcoin, Lightning, stacking your stacks to earn a Bitcoin yield. Lots of cool stuff happening with Xverse. Ken, I like to finish each podcast with a quick round of rapid fire crypto conversation hot takes. Are you up for it?
Sure, yeah, definitely.
Just going to run some questions at you, Ken. Question one, where would you say that you sit on the Bitcoin maximalist to multi-chain opportunist spectrum?
I would say I'm more of a multi-chain opportunist. Yeah.
Fair enough, fair enough. What would you say, Ken, is your firmest conviction crypto opinion?
I believe that people should have the ability and the right to their own identity, data, and that's what crypto brings to them.
Absolutely. Ken, Bill Gates famously said that we tend to overestimate what we can accomplish in 2 years and underestimate what we can accomplish in 10. As a programmer, a coder, a software guy, you'd be very familiar with this idea. But look, cast your mind forward, speculate away, let's say Bitcoin, the wider ecosystem. What does it start to look like in 10 years' time?
Yeah, so I think Bitcoin might eventually turn into kind of like the international currency where a lot of the big financial transactions are happening via Bitcoin. And then maybe some governments and countries will have their own sort of stable coin built on top of it or something like that. But the world economy, I think, could potentially be built on top of this Bitcoin currency.
Bring it on, Ken, bring it on. All right, well, flip side of this, of course, is a quote by William Gibson that you'll be very familiar with. He said, of course, that the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. With that in mind, Ken, can you think of an example of the future being here right now, but most people just aren't aware of it?
Yeah, I think, the ability to kind of just send money to anybody in the world, not having like a third party involved is, I think, a huge step in terms of, giving people their financial freedom. If you ever try sending money overseas using the existing options, it's super expensive, super slow, and a lot of times you have to enter in a whole bunch of information, whereas Bitcoin or another crypto just makes that experience so much easier.
Yes, indeed, absolutely. I can see you're on Twitter, Ken. Not sure if you noticed, but Elon Musk has bought Twitter, paid a lot of money, billions and billions and billions. He's been hanging around Twitter HQ in the last few days. What's your hot take on Elon taking on Twitter? Is this a good thing? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a good thing. As much as people want to hate on Elon, I think he's very accomplished and has done some really difficult things, right? And I think Twitter, the unique challenge right now that he and the others are trying to solve is censorship, right? Who gets to decide what is fake news, what is just freedom of speech, right? I think that's a very difficult problem. And I'm pretty excited that he's taking on that challenge, and I'm very excited to see what eventually happens on Twitter.
Yeah, me too, and I very much agree with you, Ken. I think it's if nothing else, it'll be super entertaining. and if we take this one step further, Ken, Elon, he's also talked about buying Twitter as being kind of the first step into creating the Everything app, which, I guess what he means is creating, in China there are things like WeChat and one or two others that are essentially everything apps. We don't really have the same thing in the West, but I mean, in some sense, you're kind of an app guy yourself. What do you think of Elon's ambition to build the Everything app? Is that a good idea, or is that taking Twitter too far?
I think that's definitely taking Twitter too far. To be honest, like the so-called Everything apps that I've seen, usually they do a lot of things, but they don't do a lot of things well. So I think there will always be, focused alternatives that are better than what an Everything app can offer, right? And on the flip side, like what is really an Everything app, right? Is the internet an app, right? Right? Is Bitcoin also going to be an Everything app if you build all these things on top, right? So it's difficult to say.
Yeah. All right. Time to zoom out. Time to get weird just for a second, Ken. We're close to finishing here, but time to zoom out. What do you see as the long-term future for the human race? Do you see dystopia or utopia?
I'm an optimist. I tend to see that, we're making progress as we have been in the last thousands of years. So I would say utopia.
Fantastic. All right, let's close this out, Ken. Finally, what is your favorite science fiction, a book, a film, or TV show?
I would say The Three-Body Problem is one of my favorite science fiction books. And I'm sure a lot of people will say the same, but yeah, that was really good.
Yeah, the only reason I laugh is because who was I talking to yesterday? Pavel Baines. I haven't published that podcast yesterday, but he had exactly the same answer. And what I said to Pavel is the same thing that I've said to, I'm starting to lose count of the number of people that recommend that book when I answer that question. And what I always say is I haven't read it and I really should, because anyway, I know enough about it now because I've read the Wikipedia
You don't
page.
need to read it.
Yeah, because everyone's anyway. I think that's a great suggestion though. So look, it's just there you go. Three-body problem, folks. Another recommendation. I like it. This has been fun, Ken. I've enjoyed talking to you. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Again, close us out by telling the people where they can go to find you on Twitter, and again, where they should go to get involved with the Xverse wallet and start putting their Bitcoin and stacks to good use.
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter. My handle is YUKANL, and I tweet about stacks, Bitcoin, and wallets. You can find Xverse at xverse.app. That is our website, and we're on Android and iOS.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Ken. All the best, and bye for now.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
All right, there you go. That was Ken from the Xverse wallet, from Secret Key Labs, just building cool stuff on stacks and on Bitcoin. Yeah, I enjoyed that. Ken was cool. Nice guy, smart guy. Always good to have people from within stacks on the show. Shout out Stacks Dads and all the stacks ecosystems. Also shout out anyone who has actually read The Three-Body Problem. As I say, man, so many people have recommended that. Now, look, I say this every time, but yeah, it's it's a very, very well-known piece of sci-fi, originally written by, I don't know the name of the author, but in mainland China. So obviously originally written in Chinese, and from I guess a Chinese perspective. But it's a sci-fi book about I'm not even going to try and explain the plot because I've read a bit about it, but I haven't read the book. Going to read the book, folks. I'm going to read the book. All right, I think we come to the end of another show. I'm about to record a show with Brendan Ike. Brendan Ike, is that how you say his name? I think so. The founder of the Brave browser. So look for that coming up soon. Or, yeah. Or maybe I published it before this one. I don't know. Anyway, thank you for listening, team. Don't forget to subscribe to the Crypto Conversation in whatever podcast app you are using. Give us a 5-star rating. Give us a nice review. Always appreciate it. Thank you. This was the Crypto Conversation for Brave and